Hello and welcome to another segment of Intersections, Policy, Program, and Practice Exchange. My name is Elisa William, and today I have the pleasure to be talking to Executive Director of Mental Health America Dutchess, Andrew O'Grady, and Professor of Psychology and Director of the Center on Aging and Disability Policy at Mount St. Mary College and co-founder of NOAR, the National Organization of Adult Addiction and Recovery, Dr. Larry Force.
Well, good afternoon and welcome to Intersections Exchange. We're really happy to be here. This is our second season and it's myself. My name is Dr. Larry Force and I am a professor of psychology and director of the Center on Aging and Disability Policy at Mount St. Mary College with a dear friend of mine, Dr. Jeffrey Kahana. I come to this forum every week along with another dear friend, Andrew O'Grady. Andrew and I go back 30 years. He is executive director of Mental Health America of Dutchess County. And probably about, 10 months ago, we decided, you know what, let's elevate this issue of, recovery, addictions and recovery to a national level. It's based upon a theory that is couched in a national organization of adult addictions and recovery. We have a practice orientation, and then we have a particular program called Intersections, a program without boundaries. Theories are great, programs are better, but having a place to implement them is the best. And I knocked on the door with two of my friends. We knocked on the door of Andrew's office with Jim Ball and Dave Brinkerhoff. And he said, come on in and try it in our group homes. And we did. And it's been such a success. And we have a training program, we have manuals, so you'll hear more about this. But before I introduce our guests, I'd like to introduce and welcome my dear friend and colleague, Andrew O'Grady. Andrew.
Yeah, it's great to be back. I just got back from Florida. That was quite nice. 85 degrees and sunny every day. Can't beat it.
And who sent you to the right places to go in Florida? The juice bars.
Larry told me it just happened to be that my parents have a place in Deerfield Beach, which is the same place Larry was, and he tells me I have to go to this juice bar and check it out. So I'm not a big juicer guy, but I went anyway, and I take out my phone as I'm ordering. I said, my friend from New York told me I should order a peanut butter something and something else, and the girl goes, you mean that Dr. Force guy from New York? He's our favorite customer. I said, boy, he must have been here every day.
Every day. That's the beauty of OCD. Every day.
Well, you were a superstar there. Your name was on the wall and everything. Anyway, so we are just happy to be here again and talking again about addiction and recovery and having another guest. And I really look forward to talking to Suzanne Thistle, who's up in New Hampshire. And you can see the snowy background behind her. And I'm hoping that we can hear just another version of what works for people, what doesn't work for people, her thoughts on recovery, because we've heard from people, I think almost 30 people so far. And then we've gotten we hear common themes, but we also hear little nuances that are different here and there. And recovery has to work for the individual person. So what we're trying to accomplish here is we're just putting out all different possibilities, all different ways that you can find your recovery if you're struggling with addiction. So back to you, Larry, to introduce Susan. Welcome.
Yeah, it is a pleasure, Suzanne. We really are glad you're here. As I tell my students, it's all about connections. And I am a true believer of that, not just saying it, but really living that life. And I love LinkedIn. I just love that whole thing about, connecting with people in your arena and stuff like that. And as Andrew and I were, talking about programming and who do we want to have on and stuff. So I go out to LinkedIn and I look for thought leaders in the area of addiction. And obviously you came up. And this is Suzanne Thistle. And we are so glad that she's here. She's going to talk more about her individual experience and pedigree, but just let me tell you just the overview. The overview is that she is a addiction treatment and recovery consultant. She's up there in the New Hampshire world. She has lots of connections on LinkedIn herself, and she has a very rich and deep track record in the field of addiction and, more importantly, recovery. So we are, and author. So we are so glad you're here. So Suzanne, thank you for joining us, and maybe 2, 3, 4 minutes, an overview of who you are and how you really arrived here. So thank you.
Great. Thanks, Larry and Andrew. I really appreciate you guys having me on today. I'm glad you remembered how I got here, because I couldn't remember. I'm like, well, did he get in contact with me? Did I? Because I've been sharing about my book, Chem-Free Sobriety, all over the world, which is kind of cool. I've been on podcasts and radio shows, and I haven't been on TV yet, which I'm hoping I will at some point, because I think the topic is so important right now. And you know, I've been sober for 33 years. I got sober in 1987. I had a short-lived experience with using and abusing alcohol and other drugs. I went the path of 12-step recovery. I learned the 12 steps, I worked the 12 steps, and I stayed really close to fellow people in the fellowship. And so I continue to do that today. It's really weird today with this whole COVID thing, but it's working. But in the same realm, when I first got sober, I was like, what made me do that? Like, why was I living like that? And I read absolutely everything I could read. And you know, some of the older folks like Ray Bradshaw and Claudia Black, and, you know, a lot of the Wowitz and a lot of these old authors that we don't hear from too much today. I was reading and reading and reading. And then finally, I decided to get a degree in health, and wound up getting a degree in health with an undergrad in social work. And then I went on to get my master's in counseling psychology with a specialization in addiction. And then I went off. I actually got it so that I could write. I didn't think of doing counseling, but then went off and did counseling, and wound up moving up the ladder in administration and management, and director, and, you know, all of that for a long time. So I think that's the reason why I wrote the book was because what I found was, as a director of an addiction facility, we started to get a lot of money as the overdoses started happening. We got a lot of money coming into our state, but nothing went to abstinence-based recovery. And there was this flip from, you know, it's almost shameful to say you're not taking any medication. You're staying sober without any medication. Like, shut up. You're stigmatizing those who do. And it's like, wait a minute. This works. Why aren't we talking about this? Why isn't any money going towards it? And so I said, I can't be the only one thinking this way. And so I decided to write. I had always wanted to write a book, but I started to go all over New Hampshire interviewing. I have 101 people in this book, interviewing all of these people all over New Hampshire. And I didn't want to get them from one little segment. I wanted to get them. And so it was just word of mouth. Eventually I had to start calling places, because the northern part of New Hampshire, I couldn't find anybody. So I was calling the town hall and the church. And you know, this passion I had to be like, we can't lose track of this. We have to let people know that they can still get and stay sober without medication. So I think that's how I got here, and I hope I didn't take up too much time answering that question.
Oh,
Not at all. Not at all. I mean, I think, you know, it's you know, the path that you take. Talk to us, because I think it's important, because you know, as we talked before we started to go online, you know, who looks at this? You know, policymakers, program developers, executive directors. But the most important people that look at this are people that are coming into the recovery world, okay, where they're not feeling good about feeling good.
Right.
And the fact is, you know, here you sit. Can you take us back to the day when, the moment, you could probably even tell us what you were wearing, where you were when you decided, you know what, I don't want to do this anymore this way. Can you talk a little bit about that?
I do remember the night. I'll never forget the night. It's something I keep really green, you know. I was up all night drinking. And I was actually at the time, and I don't think they can get me now, but I was a cocaine dealer.
Wow.
I like money. And so that was how I could do my drugs and still be able to afford things. Um, and smoking one cigarette after the other, thank God I quit those right after I got sober. But my heart was racing and my nose was bleeding and I was still doing it anyways. And my husband at the time I said to him, I think I might need to go to the hospital. I mean, my heart is racing. Blah, blah, blah. And he's like, oh, that happens to me all the time. Just pretend it's not happening. I'm like, what? And so I just kind of ignored it for a while. I was able to make it through the night and I wound up in the common in Plymouth. Here we have a little common area, and I was sitting there by myself thinking, I'm going to die. You know what? I should just kill myself, keep going, kill myself, whatever. At the time I had my daughter who was a year old, and I always wanted to be a mother, but I was starting to, the guilt and shame of who I was as a mother, I couldn't get rid of anymore. So I felt absolute shit. I hope I can say that on here.
Say anything you want.
I think I can.
Absolutely.
Getting to know you guys a little bit, I think I can. But I felt awful. I felt awful about myself. I didn't know what to do. And all of a sudden, this girl came up to me and started talking to me about recovery. Kind of weird, huh? And she told me she was going to these meetings, asked me if I wanted to go. And my first thought in my head was, oh my God, I can't believe she's admitting she's going to these meetings. And then I was like, okay, I'll go. And I started to go and haven't stopped. And it'll be 34 years at the end of this month. So I just keep showing up.
Yeah, that's great. 34 years. And 34 years ago, now the state's throwing money at, our state is throwing money at peers, which is fine.
Yeah.
Peer
Yeah.
recovery coaches,
Right.
and I think it's great. But 34 years ago, you were, I don't know, saved, if that's the word, by a peer or somebody who just took it upon
Right.
themselves to share that they are doing this and it helps them and you should join. Wow, that's powerful.
And I didn't even tell her until recently, after the book went out and all this. And then I went, oh my God, I don't think I've ever told her. So I finally told her about 2 months ago.
That's great. So you didn't know her before that?
No. I knew her.
Oh,
I just
okay.
never told her that she was the one that did that.
Wow.
So now she knows. So
that's
yeah.
cool.
So you had indicated that you're getting to know us and we're getting to know you, and we're so grateful for that. But as you get to know us, one of the things that you're going to see is that the paradigm that we believe in.
Okay.
Andrew is a major advocate and believer in tear down those walls, tear down those silos. You have mental health over here with a nice little entry door, and you have addictions and recovery over here with a separate entry door. And the idea is, let's make that entry door wider and everybody come in. I want to show you.
Larry's going to pull up this picture, but I've done this for 30 years now, this work, and you go through periods of, and you ran a program. You go through periods where, they want you to have this no wrong door training that lasts about a year. There's this big initiative, and everybody goes to it, and then then we all forget about it because, everybody's so entrenched in what they do. And, I'm a therapist, I'm a social worker, I'm a therapist for mental health. I can't deal with addiction. And those people that work in addiction, they don't want anything to do with the person that's acting a little funny or might be thinking a little weird. So they can't come into our place. And when I was approached to merge with Mid-Hudson Addiction Recovery Centers, MHA and Mid-Hudson Addiction Recovery Centers, I thought listen, I've been trying to make this happen for, I'm not going to say my whole career, because, I have those early years where you're just trying to learn your thing. But for 20 years, I've been trying to break down these silos. And if the state's not going to do it, then, I can do it on my own little world here. And we brought together an addiction treatment center program with a mental health program. And now the care managers that can work with everybody in the community are working with everybody in our halfway houses. We are breaking down those silos here. And now I just found out recently that in New York State, they had an alcohol and substance abuse department under the governor, and they had an office of mental health. And now they're going to merge the two of those. So I think we're really trying to get to a place where, if you want to help somebody, help somebody. You don't have to be, you don't have to have somebody come through the wrong door. And you see that people call up and try to get an appointment for their PTSD or their anxiety or their depression. And then they ask the question during the statement, do you use any drugs? Well, I smoke pot every day or every week to help me sleep. Oh, well, you have to go to an alcohol and you have to go to an addiction treatment center. And now the addiction treatment center doesn't focus on the anxiety or the depression or the PTSD or get to the real crux of why you might be doing that. So I'm just really happy that we're falling. And Larry will tell you about this picture. It's pretty incredible.
So you asked us where we live. We lived about 70 miles north of Manhattan in the Hudson Valley. So one day, June 16th to be specific, I'm driving down Route 9, which is a main thoroughfare, coming out of Rhinebeck. And I'm driving down and I look over and I see this. And what is this? This is the main building of Hudson River Psychiatric Center that is now being torn down. And the reason it's being torn down is because everybody's been deinstitutionalized and they're making it into a community-based neighborhood, stores, and everything else. And I tagged the line, mental health at its best, the tearing down of walls. I mean, this is the way it was done years ago. It wasn't done with any evil or ill intent, but typically these centers were created 90 miles north of a metropolitan area, hidden. And then they housed, at one point, Hudson River housed 5,000 people. Okay, and the whole stigma. And when we look at this, what do we see? We see those doors, and behind each door is a person, and behind each person is a story and a family. And the way that the treatment paradigm of that time, isolate, medicate, segregate, and now it's different. And the fact is that Andrew also has a picture that at times we show, and it's a picture of a bell. Andrew is an executive director of Mental Health America in Dutchess, but there's over 300 of these Mental Health America, agencies throughout the United States. And he's going to talk to you a little bit about the origin of that bell, because where it came from is unbelievable, and what it really represents is really spectacular. So, Andrew?
Yeah, you can take that picture down too, because I think, you're the only one on the camera right now. But so Clifford Beers was the founder of MHAs throughout the country. And I'm not sure if I think you have a couple of MHAs in New Hampshire. I'm not sure if you do. Up on the top, if you scroll all the way to the top, you'll see stop sharing.
No, I know that. I want to bring up something else.
And so this bell is forged from the chains and the shackles at the psychiatric centers. And he got out after he was there for about 3 months, and he called for all those shackles and chains to be kind of sent into him. And he forged a giant bell. It's as big as the Liberty Bell. And we use that as our mascot for MHAs throughout the country.
Because it's a blending, which is different. Before we ended up becoming live, we talked about our program. We have a National Association of Adult Addictions and Recovery. From that, we have a program orientation and then a practice orientation and a program called Intersections. This would not have been possible without the support and presence of Andrew O'Grady and Mental Health America of Dutchess County. And you can see what it is. It's a collaboration. And what is it? It's wonderful. Okay, it's a manual. It's close to 60 pages, based upon different modules. Because what it is, it's a health and wellness approach. You talked about, and very proudly, the affiliation with the fellowship, and we all applaud that, because for some people that is the cornerstone. However, for other people, there are other doors that, and I think, we can tolerate that today. At one point, there was only one way into recovery. Today, we realize that there's a lot of different ways. When I came into this field, everything was abstinence based. Then we talk about harm reduction. But, if you want my personal opinion, abstinence is a better way to go. That Audrey Cush line that created that moderation management thing, talking about how to treat people, train them to be moderate drinkers again. I'm not going in that direction, because I think that, once you have that experience, you've had that experience. But today we know that there are different models: smart recovery, okay, the small book. I mean, and here's our takeaway: whatever works. But the thing that we like about this, the Intersections program, it's a program without boundaries, meaning that it doesn't have to be administered in an institutional setting, doesn't have to be administered in a group home setting. And what we're really looking to do is we're really looking to plant the seed about recovery. And I'm not going to go through page by page of this thing, but we are so thrilled with this because it has a focus on movement, has a focus on meditation, has a focus on mindfulness, has a focus on, executive, looking for jobs again. Because one of the things that we know, we don't talk enough about this, but one of the things that we know is that addiction is a family issue, and families have a tendency to get better slower. And the fact is that, you're here today and you're presenting and you come to the table and you say, look, 33 years ago, I remember exactly where I was and what made me do this. As I remove this from the screen and bring up your book, which has been so widely recognized and acclaimed, talk to us about what is it that you can say to people? Because now you're in long-term recovery. But there are some people that are sitting here watching this that may have 33 hours or 33 days or 33 months, and you show up with 33 years. So maybe you could talk a little bit about that.
I'm glad you're saying that right now. It's great because, well, before that I was looking at your book here and I'm like, wow, that's a lot of the stuff that's in my next book. A lot of those little golden nuggets that you talk about in there are also in my in Chem-Free Sobriety. The next book that's coming out, I'm waiting to get it back from the editor. I expected it today. She sent it back. I sent it back to her. So hopefully I'll have it today. It's called God is in the Attic. And it's for those first 90 days. It's a book that I wish I had in my first 90 days. So that's going to be available real soon on Amazon as soon as the cover's all done. I'm just a few last details that need to be finished up and that'll be out.
And what is it titled? God is in the Attic?
God is in the Attic. It's a very spiritual book, but it's only it's for people in that first 90 days. So I get that. There were so many things that I wish I knew. Like I look back and I think of the anxiety, the depression, the this, the that, those things that were happening to me that I just kind of dealt with it. I was so, I had absolutely no idea how to live life. And so this gives you a direction, a spiritual direction about how to get and stay sober. And it's not based on one path. Like you said, there are many paths to recovery, but it is abstinence-based. And I do want to say something about abstinence-based that I've been searching for numbers, and somebody said Suboxone is 54% people stay in treatment or whatever. I don't know what it was, but 78% of physicians, the physician health program, 78% in the 5 years they followed them were abstinent. Some of those used Vivitrol, or just used nothing. Of course, they have a lot more to lose, but I think that's a program that we need to take a look at. What are they doing that maybe other programs aren't doing? So my thought with, I remember how crazy it was, how so anxious and so depressed I was. And, it's the brain is not in a good place at that time. And so, really, I love your book because really the mindfulness, eating right, drinking lots of water because we're detoxing in those first 90 days. Learning how to sleep. My book that's coming out soon is going to talk about that. Chem-free sobriety is 101 stories and also 101 golden nuggets of how to get and stay sober. So
And let me ask me, what made you decide? Because this is great. I mean, so these are 101 narratives of individuals that you knew or that you met.
no, most of them I didn't. I knew some of them. I started out knowing some of them, and then I got to know some of them. I see you got Andrew on there. That's one of the podcasts I did. He's a nice guy. I think he's in New York, isn't he? Do you know him?
Not yet.
Oh, he's a great guy. I connected him with somebody here in New Hampshire. He wants to go and do some speaking things, but great guy, great guy. Yeah, I believe he's in New York. I can't remember. But yeah, there's so much hope out there for people today. And I love the idea that you guys are talking about recovery support workers. I talk about that, case managers. When I went to school for my master's in counseling, we learned both. We learned mental health and addiction together. So when I came out back in 2001, I was like, what do you mean there's there's two different places? We should be doing this all in one place, but that's the way it was. But it's good to see that we're integrating a lot of that now.
So your book, and I'm going to take the screen share off now, but your book is available on Amazon.
Yeah, it's an audiobook too. It says 0 on there, but it shouldn't be 0.
Well, it's one of these things that typically if you buy Kindle or you buy one, sometimes they package it, together. So.
Oh, right. No, I just did that. You can listen to it if you have audiobooks.
If you have your free Audible trial.
Yeah, that's right. I'm like, wait a minute.
And talk to us about the cover.
The cover, that's New Hampshire. It's supposed to be New Hampshire. I hope the artist got it there. He was from the Philippines. The next book is, he's from Indonesia, but I made him get this trail. I forget what it's called now, but it's unbelievably beautiful. Here in New Hampshire, we have 48 4,000 footers, and I've done 17. So this particular book, it's got a metaphor of hiking. And so I talk, that's why they're called trailblazers, setting the path. These are people that have gone before you. So those folks who are in early recovery, this is a great way for them to learn. They tell their story, then they talk about medication assisted therapy and what their thoughts are about it. I ask them to tell people, what do you want them to know? And how do they stay sober? So the little glimpse you're getting about how I stay sober, this is 101 people that tell you how they stay sober on a daily basis. And then in the back of the book, there's a section for lawmakers and decision makers. They give advice on what we need to do right now.
I have a small private practice, and I've referred more people to gyms than I have to psychiatry.
Yeah.
And I'm not against psychiatry.
No.
Because there are some people, I mean, even though you're claiming chem-free sobriety, from my experience of talking with you and reading some of your background, you're not anti-medication.
No.
I mean, I think that's something that, because at some point early on in the fellowships, the assumption was if you were on meds, you weren't sober. But I think we've come to realize that's not true. Maybe you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, there's a couple of people on antidepressants in this book, and some people thought, well, if you say chem-free sobriety, I'm talking about addictive medication, things that people have abused. That's where I was coming from, like opiate medication, benzos. Those have been a problem for a lot of people. I know there are natural alternatives to these. And so this next book, I talk about this next book, I was actually in Manhattan when I was working on it the last time before it went to the editor. this next book was supposed to be part of this book, but this book was so big, I was like, I can't put both of them there. It would be too expensive. So they kind of go together. But I talk about medication in the book, and like for sleep, I don't know anybody that got sober that was able to sleep through the night that first week, 2 weeks, maybe even longer. So I have a whole chapter on sleep. These are some things you should try before you dive into a benzo. And they just did this year, made benzodiazepines on the label. Now they have to have that warning that this is habit forming. That was never on there before. And they used to, Suboxone, it says don't give them a benzo if they're on this. It could be lethal, but they're doing it all the time now. So my concern is that we just, we have a place for both. We just have the pharmaceutical companies have just so much power, and they're pushing meds so strong that people don't even think that they can. I was talking to somebody today who said she was getting sober and they were really pushing meds on her. And it was almost like, you're an idiot if you don't take a medication. Well, she didn't want it. So we can't go the other way. We can't medicate our way out, and we can't arrest our way out. We really need to look at the underlying issues and work on those, one step at a time. There's as you said, whoa.
We're still here. We're good.
I don't know what happened. Hold on a sec.
We can hear you.
There you go.
Didn't see you. You're good.
Looks like somebody sent me a text and my thing went crazy. But anyways, I think that there's a place for all of us, all of those folks who want to get sober. I do know that addictive medication can be slippery. It can be a slippery place. I was grateful that I was operated on a couple of years ago, and I talked with my doctor about my sobriety, and I was so afraid. I had put this operation off for like 10 years. And when I finally did it, my friends was like, oh, thank God, because I can't tell you the whole thing. But I finally did it, and I talked to my doctor. And, when I came out of the operating room, they gave me, it was a drip of Tylenol and Advil.
Yep.
I was like, I feel fine. I felt
Yeah.
like I could just get up and go,
Studies have shown that that a combination of Tylenol and Advil, and if you were to do it out of a bottle, you don't want to take 4 Advil. That's a prescription strength. So 3 Advil and 1 or 2 Tylenol. You don't want to go above 2 Tylenol because that could hurt your liver. That is more effective than any opiate there is. And it's non-addictive, and it doesn't make you feel loopy. It's better for pain management than anything else.
Yeah. Wow. I was so scared when I was, that's why I put it off for so long. I don't want to do this. I don't want to get addicted. Everybody's addicted to opiates. I don't want to do it. And my doctor was awesome. They just wrote to me again. They wanted me to write something so they could put it in their thing, because they were really looking. They're really looking now. Their medical director is really looking at how can we still help with the pain, but not with addictive medication. So I think we're getting there little by little. Yeah.
Well, look, let me ask you this, all right, as we bring this to a close. There was a point in your life that you never thought that you'd be drinking alcoholically or using drugs, to a level that was out of control. Mm-hmm. But I'm assuming there was also a point in your life that you never thought you'd be on, a world stage. Not that we're the world stage, but we're part of it, but we're part of it. Yeah. And all the other things that you're doing, and in bookstores and everything else, talking about your own recovery. Yeah. What would you say to somebody who, or even a family member? I know somebody who's been in multiple rehabs, but that person is now sober 20 years. And I kid you not about this. I'm not exaggerating. He was in 15 rehabs. So think about all of the blown up bridges and the family supports and everything that he, rolled over but today he's over 20 years of sobriety. Something happened. What do you think? What advice, or what, you've been on the path longer. What would you say to somebody who's coming in, or a family member who's watching this? What would you say?
I've seen some crazy people get sober. I've seen some people that have done things and been places I have never dreamed of going. And they're in this book. Actually, there's a doc in there who he's so awesome. He's a young guy. He's well, I say he's a doc. He's working on his medical license now, schooling now. Some of the places some of these people have been in this book and have been sober over 10 years. One woman, 47 years, something like that. There's 7 people with over 40 years of sobriety in there.
Wow.
Some of the places they've been and got sober. I mean, if there is anybody out there doubting that they can get sober, and I say sober, some people say clean, sober and clean, whatever. I say sober, sober-minded. Like, you don't have to use, you don't have to drink. And this book is not just alcohol, it's drugs too. So we've got some heroin addicts in there who, tried Suboxone, it didn't work for them. And they tell you why and what they did. And, people that have been to jail for a long time and just, in and out of jail, using, and doing some crazy stuff. And, one of them now is running sober homes all over New England anyways. So for anybody to say, I can't, that's not an option. They can. They absolutely can. I want to tell you too, this book, you can now, this just happened this week, you can get CEUs, PhDs, MFTs, LCMHCs, addiction specialists, everybody. It's on Genesis, GENESISCE.org. You can get 12 credits for reading this book. I thought he was somebody that connected with me. Hey, Sue, I can do this if you want to come up with a test. So they take a test. Yeah.
Now, I hope that I don't overstep my boundaries, which I've been accused of doing.
That's
but
okay.
I'm assuming at some point, my dear friend Andrew is going to say to you,
What?
hey, can you sign a couple of those books and send them my way? And we're gonna search. Am I speaking out of school? Let me.
No, I'd be happy to buy a bunch of those books, and it'd be great if they were signed. And then after we show this video, we hand them out to everybody at the halfway houses.
Beautiful, beautiful.
In the back of the book, I say, buy a case for a treatment center. My niece bought some for a treatment center. A lot of people are doing. I've given a lot away. And I usually do give one to the people who have me on their show, so I have no problem doing.
How many in a case?
I don't know. I bought a big box. I think there was 10 or 20. I can't remember, but yeah. You guys are getting lots of money now. You treatment centers are getting lots of money, buying lots of books.
I wish I could figure out how to access that money.
So the two of you will be in touch, off screen here.
Yeah.
So Suzanne, thank you on behalf of Andrew and myself. Thank you so much. Is there a way that people would be able to connect with you if they wanted to talk with you directly?
Absolutely.
Website, email, however you want to present it.
My email is suethistle@hotmail.com. Pretty simple. I'm also on Facebook. I think it's Suzanne Thistle. And Instagram, it's naturally naturally sober. Yeah, naturally sober. But a period in between the two words.
Wonderful. Andrew, any final comments?
No, I just think it's great. I love I don't want to get into the whole topic, but we've had a few other guests on who have told their stories as well. And, I'll never forget the one who, Larry asked the question about, you ever imagine that you would be drinking out of control or using drugs out of control because you're at that age where that's not what you wanted to grow up to be. And then how do you get better? And we had a guest on who was a high level executive in a corner window suite in Seattle and with Nike. But she did cocaine her whole life, and that's how she succeeded. And then it wasn't working, so she got into crack, and within 3 or 4 months of using crack cocaine, she woke up on a a mattress, realizing where she was. She was on some mattress in a crack house, and she was turning tricks, trying to make money for another
Right.
hit. It's,
Right.
but now she's doing wonderfully again. So, sobriety's there for everybody. It can happen. You can do it. You can
I
do
want
it.
to tell you one last thing before we go here. When you asked a certain question, I can't remember what it was, but way back when I first got sober, I was in a Bible study. I'm very God-centered. This book, God is in the Addict, is very God-centered. It's all God, but with all the necessities. But way back when I was in this Bible study, I wrote some goals down. I want to live on the lake, and I want to write a book. And one day I was walking, and this was over 20 years ago. And one day I was walking home. I go on a walk most days, and I was walking home and I went, oh my God, I am actually doing that. And this book it was a bestseller when it first came out. I was walking again, and my daughter-in-law, she said, do you know that's a bestseller? I'm like, what? For April and May of this past year. So, and it was weird because they were like playing with it and doing all kinds of stuff online. And I'm like, what are you guys doing? What are you guys doing? And they're like, we like your book. We want to get it out there. I'm like, wow. Wow. I mean,
What a testimony, huh?
Yeah.
Stories help people. Stories make it real for them, and people can identify. So what a great idea to have 101 stories. Because
Yeah. Great. It really
If they
is.
can do it, other people can too. There's no reason
Absolutely.
not.
Well,
Yeah.
we are so glad to have met you. We're so glad you've joined us.
Yeah.
I know that we'll definitely continue, to be having exchanges and things like that.
Yeah.
And look, that whole thing about connections, you know that we're here. We know that you're there. You know what we have, what we have, you have, and vice versa. So let's talk.
We'll stay
All right.
connected.
All right. Pleasure. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. And we'll see you again next week. Thank you.
Take care.
And thank you for joining us. If you'd like to hear this program again, share it with friends, or even leave a comment, log on to the Digital Resource Center on our website, www.intersections-exchange.org.